Welcome to the Holo Health Podcast, where we help you become healthy in every area of your life. On each episode, not only will we provide ways to improve your physical health, but also ways to improve your mental and spiritual health as well. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Alrighty, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Holo Health Podcast. Trevor's in the studio as usual. Trevor, how are you?
Doing swell, Alex. Listeners, hello. Thanks for being here.
Trevor, I've never heard you use the word swell outside of a podcast episode. Every time I say, hey,
That's
Trevor's very good. But when we're on a podcast episode, Trevor's like, hey, I'm swell. I don't know where that comes from, but Trevor, I'm glad you're swell.
Super well combined together is swell.
All right, we'll go with that.
I'm going to start using it outside as well.
More importantly, we have a friend of mine that is hopping on a conversation with us. We have Ashleigh Hubbard, or you may know her as AhubNutrition is her business, but we'll let you kind of share about that. Ashleigh, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Trying not to overheat in this heat wave we're experiencing in Virginia.
So Trevor and I live down in Georgia. You're up in Virginia. It is probably like in mid 90s down here. How hot is it up where you are at?
It's been 90 and humid, and I know I can't complain. You guys are in Georgia. I know y'all have got like extremely bad humidity too. But we can both suffer. We can both suffer.
My two things here that I'm going to jump in. One, Ashleigh and I are now friends, Alex, and you didn't introduce her as my friend too, so we'll correct that now. The second is that Alex, you're from Michigan. You just can't complain. So that's all I got. Ashleigh can complain because Virginia's a little bit more similar to Georgia, but can't hear it, bro.
Anyways, this is not to debate states. Anyways, we're gonna kick it over to Ashleigh. Ashleigh, we're super excited to jump into a conversation. For the people that don't know about you, give us just a 1 to 2 minute snapshot, paint a picture of all things Ashleigh, who you are, what do you do, and how you're connected with Holo Health.
Yeah, so in terms of being connected to Holo Health, I met Alex at Liberty University where we went to college. That was probably in 2015-ish area. At the time, I was also competing in CrossFit and Olympic lifting, powerlifting, the whole shebang, and got really, really, I was already passionate about fitness and nutrition, but at that time is when I started my company, AhubNutrition. So I help others with their goals, whether it be health goals or physique goals or just anything related to their health. I do one-on-one coaching with them, and I've been doing that since 2015. And I'm still very passionate about fitness and health in general. My goals are a little bit different than they used to be because I don't compete anymore. But I am just extremely passionate about helping people. I also got into real estate last year in Virginia. Just, you can tell I love helping people in whatever aspect of their life they're in. But that's kind of my main thing is just helping as many people as I can with things that I'm passionate about, with things I know other people are passionate about. And I think that is kind of sums up everything about where I am now.
Ashleigh, I appreciate you sharing that. I'd love to know, so around 2014, 15, you're getting into health, you're getting into CrossFit and lifting. And, I know around then you started your nutrition business. What's this like mindset that you originally get into that pushes you like, oh, I want to start doing these things? Like, what's your thought process like that got you in the door?
Start competing or my business?
More so like what's driving you to make changes in regards to your physical health?
So when I was younger, I was never really like athletic. I was never super skinny. I was kind of a chubbier kid. I was like the bigger girl. And, it was always kind of a thing that I thought about. It was something that I was aware of very early on. I went through puberty very early. And so I was just aware of my body. I was aware of like what I looked like a lot, and I compared myself a lot. And it wasn't until maybe like the age of 13, 14, I started wanting to exercise more. And it didn't even necessarily have to do with wanting to change my body. I mean, of course, like I was doing things where I was like, oh, maybe if I do more crunches, I'll get a better looking stomach. I was doing the same stuff that most people do, which we know is like incorrect most of the time. And so I started working out and I started really enjoying it and getting stronger. I noticed I kind of had some, some natural abilities with my strength. It came a lot easier for me than other people that I would like work out with. And so I kind of just took that and ran with it. People in my gyms and people when I started doing CrossFit in my CrossFit gym, they were like, dude, you should so compete. Like you're so strong, you're so young, like you could do this stuff and like win things. And I was like, yeah, I guess I could do that. And so, I had people in my corner like pushing me, which is good a lot of the times to have that push because, it's kind of hard to have that confidence when you've never done it before. And so that's kind of how I got into the competition world. But I also enjoyed it a lot too. So like competing was fun, but the day in, day out training sessions, all of that was like the fun part for me. The process is what I really, really enjoyed. And so throughout all of that, I've always been really, really driven. And so my desire for those things and to do big things with whatever I'm doing, I just have this like innate like feeling of being driven and motivated. I honestly don't know where it comes from. If I had to like think about it really hard, I might could come up with something, but I've just always been really driven with everything that I'm doing. Could be perfectionism. I don't know, maybe. But I've always just been very driven. So when I was competing, I'm like all in and I'm just doing it. And when I was done competing, it was not easy to make that, that parting of ways, but after I got over that, I went all in on my business. And so like it's kind of that driven, it just like changes shape and it shifts into whatever I'm doing at the moment. So that's kind of how I am able to switch into things and it's just like this internal drive, I guess.
Ashleigh, I love the fact that you started AhubNutrition, and I want to get to that part a little bit later in our conversation. But I want to continue down the path that we're going down as far as you've gotten into it and you see that you're really good and you started dabbling in competitions and increased levels of health and all these different things. But I can relate because that drive, that ambition, that perfectionistic nature, I guess, is in my blood as well. And it's really, really good when used and honed in a very healthy way. But sometimes that can be, what's the word, blown out of proportion. And sometimes it can consume us and sometimes it can become too much. And I know that you've been very vocal and open about just sharing your story just with that and how it's basically manifested in your life. Talk to us about that season of your health and fitness journey.
Yeah, so because I was competing a lot, I was training several hours a day. I was taking my body through pretty big extremes with like weight cutting and losing a lot of weight. I lost it was like a 6-month period of time, and I started having to cut weight for Olympic weightlifting competitions because you have to make weight for the weight classes to be able to qualify for certain meets and events and things like that. So I dropped like 40-ish, a little over 40 pounds in like 6 months. And that's a lot of weight when I already like wasn't like, I would not have classified myself as like overweight to begin with. And so, my strength wasn't really affected that much negatively, which is shocking, but I was just very lean. I had very low levels of body fat. And as a woman, I mean, I was like 16, 17 at the time. So like, I mean, that age to about 25, I mean, that's like prime, like your hormones need to be functioning. And I didn't have a cycle because I was not starving myself like intentionally or unintentionally, but I wasn't eating enough to support the activity that I was doing. And when you're a female and you're competing and you're training a lot, sometimes losing your menstrual cycle can feel like I must be doing something really really hard and really well. If I lose that, that means I'm working really hard. And so I think it can sometimes be kind of turned into that, where it's like you try to flip it into a positive, like, oh, at least I don't have to worry about that anymore. But it's something that can really affect your health negatively. Like estrogen is really important to have for your bones. And as women get older, what happens if they don't train and have muscle mass or strong bones? They can get like osteopenia and they can break their bones easily. And so it's not good to not have a menstrual cycle. But I didn't have one for 5 years because of my training and all of that. And I didn't care. I didn't care that I didn't have it because it was less for me to worry about. It wasn't going to impact my training schedule. It wasn't going to impact meets I was doing. I didn't have to worry about if I was going to be on it, like at a CrossFit competition over the weekend. Like I just didn't have to worry about it. And, at a certain point, when I got to the point where I was like, I'm not going to compete anymore because I need to focus on my business. I had to also really focus on getting my period back. And it took a while because I was afraid to do the things that I knew I should have been doing immediately, which was like eating more and putting on some body fat. That was like my worst nightmare. Like if you told me I had to go jump off a cliff or gain weight, like I'd probably jump off the cliff. I'm kind of joking, but that's how serious I was about like being afraid of gaining weight, which is just crazy. And so, and then I ended up getting it back and I ended up going through the weight gain anyway, even though I wasn't like intentionally eating more. But I was like, my body like needed those hormones. It was like so much estrogen coming back. I don't know how much you guys know about hormones, but like estrogen and progesterone are like the two main ones for females. So like I was getting all of that back. It felt like I was going through, a second puberty. I mean, think about girls going through puberty when they're young. You've got the mood swings, you've got irritability, you've got all this stuff. And I was like going through that again I guess I was like 22, maybe, when I was going through all of that again. And it was a whirlwind of just like not only dealing with the hormonal like effects of that inside, but also like my mental health was like in the dirt because I was gaining weight. I wasn't trying to gain weight. It was happening anyway. So like my whole fitness identity, like how I looked, it was changing super rapidly. And it affected me a lot, very negatively, which made it hard for me to do really anything because what I do requires a lot of confidence and self-assurance and it's like an authority. Like, yeah, I have to be an authority online and to my clients. And when you're going through something that feels out of your control, and when it's something that is regarding to your body, your physical health, and to your how your body responds to things, and that's what I teach clients about. And I'm like, well, gosh, I can't even control my own situation. Like, so it affected my confidence, physically, but also with my coaching and with really everything I was doing at the time.
So, Ashley, first, thank you for being transparent and sharing that. Like, that's not easy to share, and that was something that you shared on social media as well, and that's what honestly instigated us getting together and doing this podcast. So, my follow-up question to you sharing that is, first is, so that time window on the backside of experience and all that, what's the year, like the calendar year of that?
So when I first got it back, it was November 2019. And within 3 months, I would say, like I'd put on like 30 pounds.
Yeah. So that's 2019, we're in 2023. You're sitting in this chair right now. What are your thought processes and now, like your approach towards it now, holistically, like thinking about all of it, all areas of your health? Where do you see that challenge, I could say, as part of your fitness story, your health story?
Yeah, I think for one, I think it gives me a lot of empathy for other people and it helps me be a better coach. I've been through so much just on my own that has helped me become a lot better of a coach. And so, it was probably one of the hardest things I don't know if it was the hardest thing, but probably maybe it's up there, maybe top two, the hardest thing I've ever gone through because it
Mhm.
was so far out of my control. And you can tell from my personality, I like having control. And it was also, COVID started right after that. So everyone is isolated. Um, I think a lot of I started to like experience a lot of anxiety then too. And I think part of that was because of what I was going through, obviously, but then also everyone's isolated. And then because we were isolated and because I felt like, oh goodness, I've gained this much weight, like if I go out in public, people are going to be like, oh, she must not be like into fitness anymore. She's kind of fallen off. So I had a lot of like social anxiety around that, like fear of what other people would think about me, even though I knew in my mind like what was going on and like that what I was doing, like it just happened and I could not control it. That was a hard part too because of the whole isolation and fear. So like you've got the anxiety and fear from that, and then I've got my own issues that I'm dealing with, and it just kind of combusted. So that year was like very, very hard for those numerous reasons all packed into one.
Ashleigh, your story is unique to you, but I think the sentiment and the emotion behind a lot of things you've experienced is very common, especially in the female population. As far as just kind of like that back and forth, don't know. But the thing that really stood out to me was like you said, hey, I genuinely feared gaining that weight. That there was a core fear of like I would rather go do something crazy, scary, like you said, jump off a cliff than gaining weight. And I think that both men and women, but over my past 10 years of coaching people that primarily women can empathize with you. Ashleigh, for you, where do you think that fear comes from? Like, what were you afraid of? Like, you gained weight, but like, where did that fear originate from and what was stemming it? Like, where was that? Like, what, dig deep a little bit.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of things I can say, but if we can kind of circle back to the initial thing that I started talking about, I think all of it is kind of rooted in like what I felt like growing up and how I viewed myself growing up. And so, there's other things too, like, yeah, I have to like be online and I have to show my face on social media and be kind of like the face of my business. I obviously don't need to be at like sub 10% body fat anymore, but there is this like level of I want to look a certain way so that I can position myself as a certain person in my type of coaching industry. So like that's part of it too, but I think the thing that like if you really try to dig deep, it's like, well, I've come this far and I was this person, even though I'm comparing myself to someone that's like 10 years old. But it's like that's what I felt like, and I don't want to feel like that. Like when I was younger, I didn't like being the bigger friend. I didn't like being the heavier person or like the one that was called big boned or whatever. Like I didn't like being that person. And so now it's like, aha, like I'm in this moment where like now I'm really fit. People look at me and they're like, oh, I want to be like her. I wish I had her motivation. So it's going from like this person to like now this is my identity. And I'm like, I cannot go back to that part. And I don't think that there's anything extremely wrong with that. Like obviously there's something there that like I need to work on because I still need to figure out like, okay, I need to realize that gaining weight is not the worst thing ever. And I don't believe that it is. Because there are times where it's okay to do that and it's necessary. As long as you are healthy on the inside, it's really not the biggest deal ever. But I think that if I had to dig deep, find the root of that, it all has to do with like how I viewed myself growing up and then how I am now. And just kind of like an identity thing. Like my identity now is based in what I do.
I love that you're sharing that. And hello, we talk a lot about actually help as a stewardship. And we talk a lot about the physical side of health because that's why, honestly, a lot of people get into pursuing a healthier life and what most people think health is all about. And so you touched on it just a little bit, around 2019 and COVID and isolation and some of the mental aspects. So I would love to know in in this season in 2023, actually, what are some ways that you've experienced maybe misunderstandings or misconceptions of what health actually is?
So like from how other people are viewing it?
Yes, like the world or just culture as a whole would view it.
Right. Yeah, I think the biggest one that I see is that people think that the leanest version of a person is going to be healthy. And
Mm.
anyone that's ever been very low levels of body fat will tell you like it's not worth it. Like I felt like, you know, crap when I was that lean. And, there are trade-offs. If you want to be at that level of body fat, you have to sacrifice a lot of things. You really end up sacrificing a lot of things that make life good. You sacrifice a lot of social things. You sacrifice
Hmm.
vacations and trips. It comes with a lot of worry because you're constantly worrying, like, is this going to affect how I look? Is this going to affect my weight? Like, there's a lot of worry, a lot of sacrificing. And it's just not worth it, especially for something that, you know, if I saw both of you guys in 3 months and both of you had lost 10 pounds, I would not notice at all. And so it's something where you have to really understand why you're doing it and why you're trying to do it. Like, are you really trying to do it because you want to be healthy? Are you doing it literally only because, you think you might get validation somewhere? Everyone has their reasons. But at the end of the day, if you're not like someone that's, struggling with obesity or you're like severely overweight and you need to fix some like blood work issues or whatever, 5 to 10 pounds, if you are really stressing yourself out about it, it's just not that noticeable. It's not that important. Your clothes probably would still fit even if you lost 5 to 10 pounds. And so I think that's the biggest one for sure. I think a lot of the misconceptions come around the physical aspect, but then also on the nutrition side of things, calling a food good or bad is another one. And thinking that you can't have certain foods because they're going to make you just instantly gain weight. And, I'm very much so about balance and eating things that you enjoy in moderation. I'm not going to say that just because it can fit into your macros, you should eat it, because I don't think that's a good mindset either, because then you could just go eat fast food all day. And as long as you're in a calorie deficit, you can lose weight. But I still think that that's an unhealthy way to look at it. But at the end of the day, like if you are trying to lose weight or whatever, it does come down to that. But that shouldn't be all we're focusing on. We should focus on also how we want to feel, and our energy levels, and all of those things are going to come from like the quality of the foods that we're eating, because you're going to feel better eating a certain way versus eating fast food all day. You're going to not feel as good. So I think those are my top two that I can think of. I could get into so many other ones. I mean, we could talk about fad diets, we could talk about cleanses and detox. Like we could go for a while on those things, but I think that kind of encompasses the good and bad food types of stuff too.
No, those are both great. And just to address the first one before we kind of move, because I want to continue this conversation on nutrition, is your health is like, it's not equal to whatever your weight is or your body fat percentage. Like health doesn't equal the pounds you see on the scale. Health doesn't equal the body fat percentage that you might see. And you're spot on, Ashleigh. I like to think of it as like this funnel. Like if you're pouring fluid into a car, like it becomes more narrow. The
Mhm.
the lower body fat percentage you want to get to, the more narrow your actions, the more refined and detailed your actions have to be to get there. And a lot of people don't realize that. So when you're talking about sacrifice, like you're really giving up a lot when
Mhm.
it comes to the pursuit of 5, 6, 7, 8% body fat. And we talk about a truly healthy life is one that has balance across health as a whole, not just a physically healthy life. So, Alex, I'm curious if you'd share anything there before we touch on the second thing she was talking about with nutrition.
Yeah, the biggest misunderstanding that I found is that people think if I don't have a weight problem, I don't have a health problem.
Mhm.
That health is weight. That's a misunderstanding. That, like you said, if I'm a healthier version if I'm a leaner version, or I'm an unhealthier version if I'm a bigger version. Like that is not true, because that's part of our mission here at Whole Health to redefine health into honestly what God designed it is it's not just physical health. Health is health. It has your mental health, emotional health, relational health, and spiritual health. And yeah, your physical health is one element of it, but you are not categorically healthy or unhealthy just by a number on the scale. So that's where we're saying health is so much bigger and broader than that, that I know a lot of people that aren't pursuing any movement or exercise and they have a subpar diet, but they have peace at home. They have an intimate relationship with Jesus, that they don't experience stress or worry or concern, and they just have rich relationships. Like they're categorically healthy in those areas. Yeah, the physical health side needs some attention, but doesn't mean that they are unhealthy because they don't go to the gym or they don't do a diet. And that's why we're here at Whole Health. We're trying to say health is so much bigger than what we do in the gym and what we do in the kitchen. Yes, it's part of it, but it's just 1/5 of it, because we are a holistic being. God made us body, mind, and soul, which is why health is holistic as well. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings that we try to just talk about. And that's why we say true health, because we're saying truly healthy people steward well their body, mind, and soul. We're making sure what's inside is healthy and what's on the outside is healthy. So Ashleigh, I would love to take a right turn in this conversation and hear a little bit more about AhubNutrition, about the business and why you started it and what that looks like and how you help people with your business.
Yeah, so AhubNutrition kind of fell into my lap a little bit. I was experiencing a lot of success with what I was doing when I was competing, and people kept asking me what I was doing. And at the time I was tracking my macros and I was trying to lose weight for competitions. And so because people were seeing that, I was getting a lot of questions, and I loved telling people about it, and I loved helping them because I understood it myself. I just wanted to have a coach for it and, for the accountability. Obviously I wasn't as experienced then with all of that stuff. Like I knew what it was, but I didn't know how to like take someone through the process. But with my coach at the time, I learned a lot, and I was able to give people enough information when they asked me questions about it. And then I kept getting questions, and I'm like, maybe I should just like do this and like charge people for it, because I keep spending so much time trying to like help them as much as I can, and it's just taking up a lot of my time. And so that's kind of how it started. And people at my gym, from like my first ever gym that I went to in my hometown of Appomattox, the owner used to call me Ahub. And so that's kind of where that came from. And so I was like, AhubNutrition, like let's just go with it. And so that's how I came up with the name. Very well thought out process. And so and that's where that was born. And I've just been doing it ever since. At first I still work with a lot of CrossFitters. But at first it was like mainly CrossFitters, mainly Olympic weightlifters, because that's the kind of stuff I was posting all the time. And of course, I still do post those kinds of things, and I work with a lot of people that do that. But I also have people that I work with that, they never competed. They don't ever care to compete, but they enjoy fitness. And so that's kind of how that works. Most of my clients do track their food in some way, whether it's macros, whether they keep a food journal, some way where we can like measure it and monitor it to make adjustments so I can give feedback. But yeah, I offer one-on-one coaching with nutrition. I also have nutrition and training. And this is perfect timing for the podcast, actually. I'm launching next week an 8-week, and you're going to hear the name first before I put it on, if you guys post this before I launch on Monday. It's going to be called 8 Weeks to Macro Mastery. And it's kind of just like a beginner's foundational like group program, all about macros, all about meal prep, meal planning, behavior change, habit change, emotional eating, mindful eating, like all the goodies about like, it's a good like foundational kind of starter group program. And I'm launching it because it'll be my 8-year business anniversary next week. So that's kind of
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And so that's kind of why I'm launching that, but really excited about that. That's kind of what I'm offering right now in terms of coaching, but yeah, that's kind of how it came to be, and still going strong, loving it.
One of our habits, Ashleigh, for the 7 habits of health, we believe, people should practically pursue is eating clean. And so broadly, we say eating clean is eating whole, clean, real foods in sensible portions. But we would love for you to unpack that a little bit more. I'm sure that's a very key foundational part to your coaching model and working with so many clients over 8 years. Probably something that you encourage. So curious to know your thoughts on it and why maybe that's an approach you would take.
Yeah, so I'm always telling clients that they're going to feel their best if they're prioritizing eating nutrient-dense foods most of the time. And, you know, I think most people that work with me have had some sort of relationship with food in the past where they're looking at stuff in a good or bad view. And that can really make progress hard because you're always constantly judging yourself based on what you're eating. When at the end of the day, kind of like how we briefly touched on before, calories need to be in balance depending on what your goal is. If you want to gain weight, you're going to be eating a surplus of calories. If you want to maintain, there's going to be this range of calories that's going to be like a good maintenance range for you. If you're trying to lose weight, there has to be a calorie deficit. Now, at the same time, though, a calorie is not calories from something are not the same as calories from something else. And I don't mean that in terms of like yes, you are consuming 350 calories from, let's say, ice cream, and then 350 calories from chicken breast. Like, yes, they're both 350 calories, but the way that we metabolize those things and the way that we feel when we eat those things, the way that they affect us are all so different. So, like, for example, protein, you actually will burn more calories digesting it when you eat it than you will something like ice cream that's going to be a little bit more easily and quickly digested. So protein itself has a higher thermic effect, meaning that you will burn more calories eating it. And really anything that requires more breaking down to eat you're gonna burn a little bit more calories digesting that. So for example, let's say gummy worms versus a cup of raw broccoli. You're going to burn more calories eating the broccoli because you have to chew the food. Your body has to break that down. Whereas with a gummy worm, you're already eating something that's kind of broken down into its simplest form already. It's already a simple sugar. Whereas like carbs from other sources that are more complex, such as like, a sweet potato or whole grain bread or something like that, you have to break that down a little bit further to get it broken down into that final, that glucose. And so there's things like that are involved. There's a lot of things that affect, what food actually does to us when we like digest it and consume it. There's also like how many calories you can absorb and how many calories that you will use for so many things. Like there's so many processes in our body that like just counting calories, it's really the only and best way we have to track things. But there's also so many things underneath the surface that are happening that we can't really control at that level. And so when it comes to looking at foods that are like more nutrient dense versus processed foods, if you're trying to be healthier and you're trying to lose weight, for example, you're going to have a lot easier of a time doing that if you're consuming mostly whole foods. They're more filling, they're more satiating. You can eat more of them in terms of like the amount of volume that you're eating for less calories than like other things. For example, big bowl of vegetables is going to be a lot less calories than a big bowl of cereal. Is cereal delicious? Yes. Are you going to be very satiated from it? Probably like not. Like honestly, when I eat cereal, I want more cereal. If I ate a whole big thing of vegetables, like I'd probably be pretty full for a while. So there's definitely a reason why we should be promoting that because of that factor, but also all of the nutrients and vitamins that we get from those foods. And they really do make us feel better. I had a client today actually tell me that when she eats better in terms of her food quality, like it motivates her to make better choices everywhere else. And that's a huge thing because, yeah, we can do the argument of like, oh, well, you can have this if it fits into your macros. Like, it's fine, like, whatever. But then you also don't think about the effects of that as well. So, like, for this person, eating healthy for her means that it makes her more motivated to get outside for a walk. Whereas if she ate a donut for breakfast versus maybe some oatmeal with eggs and fruit, maybe with that breakfast, she would feel better and maybe be like, oh yeah, I was going to take a walk today. Whereas like, let's say she ate a donut, she probably wouldn't feel the best. Maybe she's a little groggier mentally. Maybe she wants something else that's sweet because it kind of made her hungrier after she ate it. And then she feels bad because she didn't eat a healthier breakfast and now she's not going to go take her walk. So like a lot of our actions do have a trickle down effect. And so I think we should be viewing everything that we do with that kind of mindset.
Ashleigh, we could have an entire podcast conversation just about nutrition, which I would love. But as we're kind of rounding the corner of the nutrition conversation, as a nutrition coach and someone who's well knowledgeable in it, what is just one general tip that you would share just the listeners with, anybody that like, hey, when it comes to nutrition, here's just one thing I would leave you with as we're kind of rounding third in our conversation?
So with nutrition only, I would say, that's hard. I guess other than not having a good versus bad food mindset, I would say to remember that just because you make a decision during the day that you're not super proud of, it doesn't mean that the rest of the day has to be, downhill from there.
That's so good.
You can always reroute your day.
I'm not sure if either of you guys saw this, but recently James Clear posted a quote about just exactly what you're saying, Ashleigh. And he was saying like, hey, don't treat the day as all or nothing. Like, I love to break the day up in pockets, like the morning, midday, afternoon, evening, and just like getting back on track within those pockets of the day. So it's just like what you're saying. It's like, doggone it, I had a donut. It's like, okay, well, let me get some nutrients for lunch and make sure that I'm prioritizing that.
Yeah, I made a post about it several weeks ago, and I was like, I kind of made the analogy of like a GPS. So when you're using a GPS and it tells you to go down a street, if you miss that street, it doesn't say, all right, well, buddy, go home now. No, it says like, hey, we're rerouting you. We're going to get you there, but we're going to go on a different path. So I was like, reroute your day then, just like a GPS. Like you still can get to the end of your day, aka like your destination, in one piece and like still with the same goal. It just might look a little different on the way there. Like you don't have to like make the entire day a wash just because one piece of food that you ate was like not perfect,
That's a good word. So to piggyback off of what Alex asked you, looking at health holistically, what would be one thing that you'd leave the listeners with?
Ooh, I'm having trouble like not segmenting it into like physical versus nutrition.
Whatever you want to share.
Well, yeah, whatever's on your heart.
I mean, from a lot of conversations I've been having recently, and just because I believe this too, but like just moving more. We have generally Americans have a very sedentary lifestyle. And regardless of like focusing on everything all at once, I think the best first step for 99% of people is just to move more. Because I think it's one of those things where, like I was saying before, it's going to have a trickle down effect that's positive. If you're moving more, you're going to feel better. And when people feel better, they make better choices. If you feel worse, you're going to make not so great choices. For example, how many times have you ever either known someone or dealt with yourself something like depression or something where you're feeling down about yourself? Typically, the types of people dealing with that go towards foods that are comfort foods and highly processed foods because they feel bad already and they want something to make them feel good. But then in reality, those foods never fix anything. They don't make you feel any better. Whereas if you look at what I was saying about moving more, like when you move more, you're going to feel better. You're going to make better choices. And so I think, positively and negatively, like I was saying, our behavior and actions can have an effect, whether it's a positive domino effect or a negative one.
I love that, Ashleigh. Well, hey, I think this was just the tip of the iceberg. We could have kept going and going about so many different things. You said so many good, rich truths that I was like, gosh, I want to ask about that, want to ask about that, want to ask about that. But as we're kind of coming in, to an end of this conversation, I just appreciate your time, and I appreciate your impact. I appreciate our friendship, just intersecting way back at Liberty University in college. And I think it's just cool to both witness and support you from a distance, saying, hey, we are in the same fields fighting the same battle. That there's so many misconceptions out there that people are just wasting sideways energy with when it comes to pursuing a truly healthy life, that you just debunked a lot of those. So just thank you so much for your time and this conversation. Trevor, do you have anything left to add to our conversation?
I would echo Alex's sentiments. And then Ashleigh, if the listeners listen to the episode and they're like, I need to check out what she's doing, what's up with Ahub, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at AhubNutrition, or my personal page is Ashleigh Marie Hubbard. I spell my name differently than most Ashleigh, so it's Leigh and not EY. But that's where you can find my Instagram. My website is AhubNutrition.com. And yeah, it was really a fun time on the podcast. Thank you for having me.
It was our pleasure, Ashleigh. Thank you so much, Trevor. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Whole Health Podcast. See you guys.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more, check us out on social media or visit us at holohealth.com to learn how you can start living a truly healthy life today.